Welcome to this training entitled Title IX Sexual Harassment. This training is for all BISD employees. In May 2020, the Department of Education posted the final regulations for an allegation of Title IX sexual harassment in K-12 institutions. Stated within these regulations was a requirement that all employees within the institution be trained on 6 topics. This video training meets the requirements specified in federal law. The definition under Title IX defines sexual harassment under 3 categories: quid pro quo, unwelcome conduct, and lists some specific behaviors. The Department of Education places the burden of proving sexual harassment on the institution, and they have defined specific steps that must be taken as a part of the grievance process. Sexual harassment behaviors apply to opposite sex and same-sex relationships, as well as in a dating or a married relationship. Over the next 3 slides, we will gather a better understanding of what each part of this definition means. Let's first look at quid pro quo. This form of sexual assault can only happen between an employee and a student. Quid pro quo occurs when a favor or an advantage is granted or expected by the employee in return for something from the student. This can either be explicit, which is clearly stated in detail that leaves no room for confusion or doubt. An example of this might be that a teacher will offer to change a student's grade if the student will send a nude photograph of himself or herself to the teacher. Quid pro quo can also be implied, which is not plainly expressed. An example of this might be a teacher asking the student, what is it worth to the student for the teacher to change his or her grade? The second type of sexual harassment that falls under Title IX deals with any unwelcome conduct. This standard is more challenging because it must meet 3 prongs. First, the unwelcome conduct must be so severe, pervasive, and objectionably offensive. Secondly, the harassment denies that the victim equal access to his or her educational program and activities. And third, it must be from the perspective that, quote, a reasonable person standing in the shoes of the complainant, unquote, would consider this act sexual harassment. The third definition provides 4 specific allegations that will fall under sexual harassment in a Title IX situation. First, sexual assault. Secondly, dating violence. Third, domestic violence. And fourth, stalking. So even if a couple is married or dating, if the behavior happens at school or at a school-sponsored activity, this must be reported. Demonstration of severity, pervasiveness, offensiveness, or denial of equal access to education is not required under these 4 allegations. Reporting is mandatory. Teachers, cafeteria workers, counselors, nurses, substitute teachers, and other campus employees hear all kinds of information all the time. We hear rumors or overhear student conversations. We may see things on social media or in text messages or in student writings and drawings. We may witness behaviors that could be deemed sexual harassment in our classrooms, in the hallways, in gyms, or at actual school events. And a student who has been harassed may come and directly share the incident with an employee with whom they have a relationship and trust. These 4 examples are what the law calls, quote, actual knowledge, unquote. In the past, we may have seen or heard these allegations and done nothing with them. However, federal law now requires that all K-12 employees are mandatory reporters of any sexual harassment behavior identified under this new definition of Title IX. Also, we are held to the standard of reporting what we should have known or should have reasonably known. For example, if sexual harassment is occurring in the dressing rooms and they are not being supervised, we should have reasonably known of the presence of this behavior if there had been proper supervision. What is deliberate indifference? When we have actual knowledge and don't report it, the law addresses this as deliberate indifference. Deliberate indifference is a conscious or reckless disregard of the allegation by not making a report. It is more than negligence, as it requires us to act even when an event might have caused harm or will cause harm. In the past, when a victim has reported sexual harassment or assault, there has been a presumption that the victim or complainant is always telling the truth. However, under the new Title IX regulations, there are two new requirements. First, there must be equal consideration or weight given to evidence presented by both parties. There can be no more credibility given to the alleged victim than to the accused, and there can be no disciplinary action until the conclusion of the grievance process, which may last up to 60 days. The last responsibility that we're going to discuss regarding employees is confidentiality, and this requirement for all staff. Employees of K through 12 institutions are held accountable to understand confidentiality guidelines under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, better known as FERPA. Under Title IX, we want to look at confidentiality under two filters: the filter of promising confidentiality to students and our guidelines for confidentiality in our knowledge of an allegation. We should never promise confidentiality to students when somebody is hurting a student, when a student wants to hurt someone else, or when a student wants to hurt himself or herself. Employees who are making a report must know these four things. First, making a report, the only person that you are required to make the report to is the Title IX coordinator for your K through 12 institution. Remember, this report is referring to a Title IX sexual harassment report. Secondly, the employee may also share the report with a campus principal unless the principal is accused of the sexual allegation. Third, you must not share the information with anyone else except the investigator assigned by the institution or the school district, the representative of the accused, and the representatives for the victim. Title IX names these two roles as the respondent and the complainant. And fourth, if child abuse is also suspected, all laws regarding responsibilities of reporting child abuse are still to be followed. Finally, we will briefly review the four phases of the grievance process. During the preliminary phase, a report or a formal complaint is submitted to the Title IX coordinator. The coordinator reviews the complaint and most likely will investigate, but has the option to dismiss under certain criteria. Notice of the allegation is sent out, and a safety analysis will be completed and supportive measures offered to both parties while the grievance process is being conducted. During the investigation phase, after the investigator gathers all information possible through a comprehensive process, both parties may review the evidence or present new evidence to the investigator. The investigator will then write a report and submit it to the Title IX coordinator. A trained decision maker is assigned to review all information and write a determination of responsibility report, which determines guilt, innocence, or that there was not enough evidence to make a conclusion. And the fourth phase allows for either party to appeal the determination of responsibility and can choose to appeal, at which time a new decision maker will be selected, new material is reviewed, and a final outcome is determined. So in summary, remember that by federal law, you are required to report. Let's review that basic information one more time. Know the definition of sexual harassment. What are the 3 prongs of this definition? Be familiar with quid pro quo, unwelcomed conduct, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. Know what actual knowledge means. Anything we see, hear, witness, or someone directly tells us, but also remember that it's not only what says, but what should have been known. You need to know how to make a report, and you need to know who the Title IX coordinator is. In Breckenridge ISD, the Title IX coordinator is Superintendent Brian Allen. You can either make a report through an email, phone call, or by completing a written report. To get a report filled out, you can email the Title IX coordinator to request that form. If you are unsure whether or not to report it to the Title IX coordinator and let that person make that decision. Thank you for participating in this training and learning how to make our campus and our district a safer environment.